That's Enough Out of You podcast is sponsored by Todd John's Law. Unfortunately, bad things happen to good people, whether it's the result of an auto accident caused by the carelessness of another driver or being charged with a crime. Dealing with the aftermath of a personal injury accident or being involved with the criminal justice system can be extremely difficult. That's why, whatever you're facing, you should never go it alone. You need an experienced attorney who will stand by you every step of the way. Todd is experienced, licensed, trusted, respected, and guaranteed. No one will work harder or more diligently on your behalf, and he will personally handle your case from beginning to end. Located on Drinker Street in Dunmore, Pennsylvania, Todd has been representing the legal rights of Scranton and Wilkes-Barre personal injury victims and those accused of a crime for over 20 years. At Todd John's Law, the utmost priority is ensuring that your rights are always protected and that your case is resolved as quickly and fairly as possible so that you can move on with your life. Call Todd John's Law at 570-876-6903. With Todd John's Law, you will receive equal justice under the law. That's Enough Out of You is also sponsored by Case Quattro Winery, featuring over 20 flavors of wine, from dry red, dry white, and fruit for your sampling pleasure. Case Quattro Winery offers entertainment, parties, and private events. Now serving a full menu with a little something for everyone, including appetizers, salads, dinners, pizza, and desserts. Case Quattro has some of the best live entertainment in the area, with comedy and karaoke nights and live bands. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram for all of our upcoming events. And if you mention the code OUTTA, that's OUTTA, you get 15% off of your order. Located on Main Street in Peckville, Pennsylvania, call 570-382-3855 for more information. And we thank Case Quattro Winery for their support. All right, welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I am your host, Bill Rader, your main host. And joining me, as always, is the other host, Mr. Sean Kane. Sean, what's going on?
Billy Raids, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm feeling pretty good. We're recording this on late in middle of February, I guess. And today was the day that the Rangers, New York Rangers, had their outdoor game against the Islanders, and they came back. They were down 3 goals, came back for a big win in overtime. So I'm in a good mood tonight.
I seen that, Billy. I knew you were going to be happy about that one.
So I'm feeling pretty good. And we have with us a tremendous guest, a great get, Sean. So congrats to you on this.
Thank Professor Pablo on this.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll thank him as well. We have with us Matt Crumpton, who is one of the authors on the book Chokeholds, the book that we talked to Professor Pablo about. And he's also the host of the very popular podcast, Solving JFK, which really analyzes all of the issues in the JFK assassination from both perspectives of the Warren Report, the defenders and the critics of the Warren Report. And then Matt also appeared as a commentator on the Paramount Plus documentary, which we have recently seen, JFK, What the Doctor Saw. So welcome, Matt Crumpton. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill and Sean. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming,
Matt.
Sean, we have a lot to talk to Matt about. Let's get ready.
We do. We got a lot to cover. And Matt, I want to talk about some of the chapters that you were instrumental in the book. And I want to start with the Oswald impersonations.
Sure.
Because this is fascinating. And it's just, there's so many different, all you really have to do is just prove that there were one of these, and really that to me is a chokehold, because why would a lone gunman be impersonated? But there's so many different ones, and some of them, go down the angry lone nut, some of them tied to Castro, some tied to the Russians, and it's just so many different, and we know there's always a contingency plan. So these are all interesting, but let's start with I want to get into the specifics on these because you listed so many, and I was aware of a lot of them, but some of these I wasn't even aware of. There's just so many of them. But let's start with the Roger Craig witnessing two Oswalds running out of the Texas School Book Depository.
Yeah, that one I learned about in James Douglas JFK and the Unspeakable. And basically it's Roger Craig and there are a guy and his boss are in traffic. He's following his boss. That's two of the other people. And then there's another. I forget who the exact witnesses are, but there are about five witnesses that see the man running down the hill, and three of them say that he resembled Oswald, including Roger Craig.
Right.
So it's Helen Forrest and James Pennington and Roy Cooper and who's the other guy? Marvin Robinson. So, um, but yeah, it's right after the fact, that he comes running down the hill, and then there's the whole Roger Craig story that's in the Warren report about him that he stood by, about him going to the to try to identify this man, and he he says that Oswald said, don't bring Mrs. Payne into this. Now they're going to
Right.
know all about everything. So yeah, I mean, some people don't think Roger Craig is credible. I personally did a deep dive on Roger Craig on the podcast, and I do think, I mean, he's a little out there, but I don't I think he's credible. So, I think, by the
And
way, that just if I could real quick, that's one major inference split point, I think, between people who think that there's more likely there was a conspiracy and people who
mhm.
think that, it's Oswald alone. It's like every time someone challenges the official story, they're always, if you think it's likely that, oh, they're just trying to like get some clout, or they're just trying to get money, or trying to do whatever, you can think that sometimes, but if you tend to think that more often, you're more likely to believe Oswald did it alone. And if you tend to think, well, I don't see exactly what this person had in it, I don't know that they would be incentivized to act that way, I think that's where more of the folks land on the conspiracy side.
And a couple of things there. So Oswald is seen getting into a station wagon, and of course, the official story is that Oswald got on a bus. The other thing is that
Right.
he's seen with a Latino looking man, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, a Latino looking man was with him that picked him up when he that's driving the light green Nash Rambler.
Right.
And Ruth Payne didn't own a Nash Rambler. She owned something that was similar. She owned a station wagon, but it wasn't a Nash Rambler. So it's possible that what Oswald may have been referencing that, but why would he, think that they'd be picking up somebody who looked like him? I don't know. That's weird. There's a
Right.
lot of stuff that's weird with the impersonations. I mean, we'll get to them, but it's like, why would the CIA or whoever it is, the military intelligence, whoever the culprits are, why would they have somebody going around intentionally saying that they were Oswald? I mean, it seems like they're driving, drawing attention to something that wouldn't have been a big deal, but now they've created a trail that shows there's two people in the same time that can't be. I mean, that's one part of it that I don't really get.
Well, my opinion on that, Matt, is with these intel ops, they're always a contingency plan. So as I mentioned earlier, some of these show Oswald as an angry lone nut. Some show him as tied to Cubans. Some show him tied to the Russians. And I think, once
Sure.
it's decided from the powers to be, Lyndon Johnson goes with the lone gunman theory, that a lot of these other ones have to disappear. So,
Right.
this is why they get rid of a lot of these witnesses. Like you can't say this one here when you have Oswald seen with a Latino looking man, because all of a sudden, yeah, how do you explain that if he's a lone gunman?
And also,
Sure.
Sean, what we've talked about before is the more conflicting information that's out there, the more confusion it causes,
Yeah,
right? And that benefits,
Right.
the CIA,
sure.
right?
People don't want confusion. They want to,
They want a clean, story.
Sure. Yeah.
So, anything else, Matt, before we go on to the next one?
No, I mean, that's that one is a big one, and like you said, all the evidence points to Oswald having taken a bus and then stopping by his rooming house. The whole thing with, they honk the car horn, and then Earlene Roberts says that she hears a police car horn honk and sees it drive by and stop briefly. That's super weird. I mean,
Right.
I think that gets kind of thrown by the wayside sometimes. But that's the official story. Then there's the whole conversation about how did he make his way to the Texas theater. But yeah, it's like you said, it starts a trail of a lot of impersonations of Oswald. So some of them I think you could kind of go, well, maybe you can write this off to something, and maybe it's just the person got confused after the fact, and they think that they saw Oswald because they saw him on TV, and they
Right.
wanted to feel close to history or whatever. There may be a couple of them you can argue like that, but most of them that we mentioned in the book are ones where they're saying things that specifically seem to point to Lee Harvey Oswald
Right.
in specific situations, and that's what makes it so strange.
Do you want to go into Roger Craig though? What happened to him down the road? Because there was some strange stuff happened to him. Wasn't he run off the road?
I want to say, yeah, he had multiple attempts on his life.
Multiple,
We
yeah.
covered him, I want to say, like around episode 5. We're on episode 34, 35, something like that right now. It's been a few, but and then he was he was shot at a few times.
Right, right,
He had his shoulder blown. He successfully was finally actually shot. They got him, and he had to rehabilitate from that. And then he supposedly committed suicide, and the gun was I want to say like on the bed or far away. It was in a place that you wouldn't expect it to be.
right.
There's some details on the suicide that don't seem to check out. I think there's enough. It's cloudy enough that somebody in good faith could go, I don't know, I
Yeah.
don't.
There's a
But
lot of
it,
them in this case. In this case, there's a lot of suicides there that
there
you kind of
are.
shake your head
They
head at,
they
like the
really add up.
Sheld and you know,
Yeah,
um, Carlos Prio, I think is another one. I mean, there's just a bunch of them.
yeah,
But let's go on to the next one. Let's talk about the Sports Drome rifle range.
sure, yeah. Yeah, that one is so the story is it's what's the kid's name? Homer Wood, Sterling Wood. He's the
Okay.
13-year-old. The Homer's the dad. And basically they're shooting targets at the rifle range, and the dad says hey, he says, hey, watch out for the 105 howitzer. And the son says, don't worry, it's only an Italian carbine. So they're referencing the guy that's shooting next to them, and the guy shooting next to them then starts to shoot other people's targets and hit them. So
Right.
he has this you know a a, a Italian carbine. That's what a Mannlicher Carcano is, and
Right.
he's shooting other targets. But he left with another person, so it's kind of like seems like it couldn't have been Oswald. But the boy and the dad both identified that guy, saying he looked just like Oswald. And then also he he's practicing. This is 6 days before the assassination, so it's not an absolute slam dunk, but you do have those boys. Or, I'm sorry, you do have the boy and the father, saying that they looked very similar.
Right.
Um, and then there's another guy named Garland Slack who would go to the sports drome, and he also says that he saw Oswald, shooting at other targets. Oswald didn't have a car, and uh, he, so if either he would have had to drive there or someone else would have driven him, and that's kind of the problem why they said he couldn't have been there. Now the official story is
He
Lee
was with his
Harvey
family, right?
Oswald was, yeah, he was with the Paynes, or with
Right.
Marina that weekend, I believe. So yeah, it's you've got three people, and it's just kind of comes down to, what's the Occam's razor on three eyewitnesses that say they saw something versus it not being there. And I will also say that if this was like the only one, I would easily write it off. It's just
Hmm.
that there's so many of them.
So many. How about the Fort Worth gun store?
Hmm. Hey. Yeah, the Fort Worth gun store. I always get that whenever I think Fort Worth gun store, I think Dial Rider, which is like the coolest name ever, the guy that put on the site. But that's not the thing for the imposter. Dial Rider. It's such a cool name. Like if I ever need to have like and I shouldn't give it away, but anyway. Um
I will know now.
exactly. There's an FBI report that a guy who looked like Oswald was acting rude in a way that was memorable the for Dewey Bradford is the guy's name. He worked at Morgan's gun shop in Fort Worth, and he basically says that he uh the person that he saw was Lee Harvey Oswald that came into the gun store. And this is Friday, November 1st. So again, this is at a time when Lee was supposedly with his family and
Right.
wouldn't have been available. So yeah, the Warren Report goes out of its way to address a bunch of other instances of Oswald sightings, but they don't talk about Dewey Bradford. And again, these are just FBI reports. So again, I do think it's possible for sure that some of these people didn't actually see it. Like this one is not nearly as strong as the sports drone and
Right.
or even the car dealership. The car dealership's super strong too.
Well, let's go into that
Ralph
one.
Yates is my favorite, but yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get into Yates. That's unbelievable. But let's
Yeah.
get into the car dealership.
Yeah. So and forgive me on this because it's been a minute since I've dove dove deep into all
Was
these
this
here.
the one where he was buying cars for the Friends of Democratic Cuba?
No, that's Bolton Ford. That's
Okay, that's Bolton
earlier.
Ford. Okay,
This is
okay.
basically it's right around the time of the assassination, Saturday, November 9th. And which is the day after the Morgan's gun shop incident. He tells this salesman, Albert Bogard, that he wants to buy a Mercury Comet, and he says he doesn't currently have any money, but he expected to be coming into money in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and he'd paid cash for the car. So okay, there you go. So it's like his big event coming in 2 or 3 weeks. Hey, that matches up with when Kennedy was assassinated. Um, so the guy test drives the car and he's driving it all crazy, 75 to 85 miles an hour. And then this is according to the witness, and I think it's an FBI statement, or maybe they talked to the Warren Commission, but they talked to the Warren Commission, but he says maybe I'm gonna have to go back to Russia to buy a car.
And
Okay.
Oliver put that in the movie, didn't he? That was in the
Yeah,
movie.
I think so. I
Yeah,
need to rewatch the movie.
I
I
think it was
actually
in the
haven't seen
movie.
it in a
Bill, you
while.
remember that,
I
right?
don't remember that. No, I don't
Yeah, it
remember
was in the
that from
movie. I'm pretty sure
But
it was in the
yeah,
movie.
Unless it was one of those things where it was like an off, where they had something going on and you just
Yeah, they
kinda
were talking
to
about
go
a
back.
lot of different things, and
Yeah,
they put that in
it
the
could
movie.
be.
yeah. So it's and by the way, he says that it looks like Oswald, and he remembered that his name was Lee Oswald. So it's, I mean, that's pretty strong. And then
Right.
there is a coworker who worked with him named Frank Pizzo, another guy, Eugene Wilson. And they both say that let's see, what do they say? That he wrote down the customer's name, and the name that he wrote down was Oswald, and they saw the piece of paper. So there you go. So I think that one's a strong one, and that's the one where it's seems like he's trying to make it known, to make it seems like he's trying to build a legend
Right.
for Lee Harvey Oswald. So,
Absolutely.
and I guess you could say, hey, like, and this is my apologies to listeners of my show who want to wait until the end. I know, it's kind of like, yeah, there are some people that listen to the show that like don't want me to get ahead of things, but it's like people have been studying this their whole lives. They know, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
They know the ending. But it- um what was I going to say? Oh, I think you could always say, like you were saying there, there's different plans, and one of them was to try to do things to make it point to, hey, there was a conspiracy with Oswald in Cuba, and then
Right.
that's the whole, how did we get How did LBJ get Earl Warren to go along? Because he told him, a little incident in Mexico City, meaning Oswald was, talking to the Cubans and the Russians, and
Right.
actually it is a
Absolutely.
conspiracy involving Oswald. Don't go. We need you to go, cover this up for your country. Don't go too far down the tracks, kind of thing. So I guess these interactions could support that narrative, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's just maybe they decided that, wait a minute, like you said, maybe they made the call, hey, we're not gonna we're not gonna tempt nuclear war at this moment, and instead we're just gonna calm everything down. I don't know.
Well, there's the the documentation with the transcript with Johnson when he's talking to Katzenbach and Hoover, and he's scared about World War III breaking out. Have you read that one,
Yeah.
Matt? That's
Yes.
that's what I was
Yes,
referring to. And then Johnson, of course, he says, we got to take this out of the realm of a communist conspiracy.
for sure. And
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say the Bolton Ford incident that took place though. Oswald that we know was in Russia at that time, right?
Correct. That's right. Yes.
Okay, and the Friends of Democratic Cuba was tied to Guy Bannister, right?
I believe it was tied to Bannister. I want to say the guy who incorporated it is Jack, one of the guys, former employer of Oswald,
Right.
which is weird also.
Yeah. And Bannister, having somebody buy cars for the Oswald name is weird back all the way back in would have been like 61, right?
Right, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, again, yeah, that's like they're trying to build the legend.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
So how about let's go to the Redbird Airfield one.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a spicy one, man.
Yeah.
Um, so Redbird Airfield, this is, let's see, this is the Wayne January one. Cool name too. Wayne
Yeah.
January is a great name. Like that's like the name you would hear in some sort of movie.
Right.
Wayne January. It's like a private investigator.
Yeah.
Um, but so 2 days before the assassination, uh, these people go to talk to Wayne January, who owns basically a small private jet company, at Redbird Airfield, which is like the smaller one just south of Dallas, south of downtown, about renting a plane for the afternoon of November 22nd, to go to the Yucatan Peninsula, which is, it's kind of, you could get to Cuba from there, I guess, is the idea. Um, and he wouldn't work with them because he thought that, they were doing something shady. He didn't know exactly what. Thought maybe they were going to hijack the plane. And so it was a couple that was talking to him, and when they left his office, he saw a man sitting in the car that he then identified as Lee Harvey Oswald. So the idea is Oswald was with them. Now this is an FBI report, that's what kind of brought this to light. Um, and January's later interviewed, and he says that he could identify Oswald 9 out of 10. So that would be one that would be good for follow up on, but that's an FBI report. Another one I found out about in JFK: The Unspeakable. That book really got me hip to a lot of documents,
Right.
that kind of got me down the path I'm on now.
And of course, there's a document from Hoover himself, right? Around like I think it was like 1960, all the way back, that he said someone was impersonating Oswald.
Yes, that's right. When he was in Russia, there's a memo from J. Edgar Hoover, which is in the book somewhere, uh, that, yeah, Oswald's currently being impersonated. There's also this will, I just recorded this, so it's fresh in my mind. Um, when Oswald was in Russia, I'm sorry, Richard Russell, who was on the Warren Commission,
Right.
asked a friend of his, Philip Corso, who's a retired general, colonel, some high-ranking military official, to try to find out what he could find out, just to see if Oswald was linked to intelligence. And I don't know if this is after his time on the Warren Commission or during the time, but one of the things Corso was able to find out from talking to Francis Knight, who I believe was the head of the passport office at the time, is that there are 2 passports issued for Lee Harvey Oswald, and they were used by 2 different people.
Wow.
So that seems like a smoking gun thing.
Yeah.
Now the question is like, is it the same here? Okay, so here, can we just talk some possibilities? Because we can talk the
Sure.
specifics, but the question is, so what's happening here? So is it, some scenarios? Is it the Harvey and Lee scenario where it's one dedicated guy who kind of looks like Lee
Right.
Harvey Oswald, and he's just popping up in all these places specifically working to frame him? And whether or not, how long you want to trace that back, we could talk about. But so that's one scenario. Another scenario is it's several different people claiming to be working under the name Lee Harvey Oswald, just like to build the legend, but they're all different. And here's the great thing about Oswald. He's an average looking white guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's an average looking white guy. So a lot of
Yeah.
people kind of look like Oswald.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was nothing too
nothing
distinguishing, about him, right?
Yeah. So one scenario is the same person always impersonating him, the doppelganger scenario. The second scenario is multiple people just using, sort of building a legend, sort of maybe a more classic intelligence type scenario. And the third one, which I had not previously considered, and this really doesn't pertain to what we're talking about right here, but this is for just, documents, like all the military document conflicts, and, him being in 2 places at the same time, and all, as a kid, school records, all that kind of
Right.
stuff. It's possible that they just made a fake document because they wanted it to seem like he was somewhere else, and then they forgot to clean up the real document.
Okay.
Which would point to, because he was doing something, like maybe was he learning Russian in Atsugi because he was intelligent? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that kind of thing.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't really know. I mean, for these are witness statements, and then after the fact. But the problem is, after the fact, it's like the biggest thing that's happened in all these people's lives. You know what I mean?
Right.
So after the fact, I mean, I do see how someone could go, man, did that happen to me? Am I tied to this crazy historical event? Like, if you're on the fence, I get why you would lean into it. But if you're not sure, or there's a lot of pushback, especially when you're providing so much granular detail that can be, that, you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't have known to make up.
Right.
That's why I do think there's some teeth in this, enough to write a book, to write a chapter about it in a book called Chokeholds.
And we will be right back. We'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsors, Residence Inn by Marriott in Scranton. Discover comfort and convenience in Scranton. If you're planning a short or extended stay in the Scranton, Pennsylvania area, Residence Inn by Marriott, located at 947 Viewmont Drive, will ensure your stay is nothing short of exceptional. Their friendly team is committed to providing you with top-notch service and a memorable experience. Whether you're in town for business, leisure, or a bit of both, Residence Inn Scranton has you covered. They offer free Wi-Fi, an indoor pool, meeting and event space, complimentary hot breakfast, a fitness center, and an on-site market. And Residence Inn Scranton is pet-friendly. Your home away from home. Residence Inn Scranton features spacious studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom suites, and all are complete with a fully equipped kitchen. There's a cozy fireplace lounge and an outdoor barbecue area. Call 570-343-5121 or go to Marriott.com for more information. Residence Inn Scranton, where hospitality meets home. That's Enough Out of You is also sponsored by Fairfield Inn by Marriott. Located at 949 Viewmont Drive in Scranton, Pennsylvania, Fairfield Inn Scranton exemplifies travel made easy. They offer stylish guest rooms with plush bedding, complimentary hot breakfast with healthy options, one of the area's premier hotel fitness centers, as well as nearby dining options. While you're staying at Fairfield Scranton, make sure you check out some local attractions like the Scranton Cultural Center, the Electric City Trolley Museum, Montage Mountain Resorts, and the Steamtown National Historic Site. catch a Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins game or a concert at the Mohegan Sun Arena, or take the historic Lackawanna Coal Mine tour. Fairfield Inn Scranton is in the center of it all. Experience comfort and convenience in Scranton at the Fairfield Inn by Marriott. Call 570-343-5121 or go to Marriott.com for more information. Fairfield Inn Scranton, where hospitality meets home. Speaking of that, Matt, how did you get involved with that book? I'm curious about that.
Man, let me just tell you this. I kind of like came on the scene here in the JFK world in the last year and a half, and it's been really lucky. And I feel bad because there are so many people who know so much more than me that have been doing it for so much longer. And that, you know, I've kind of just jumped in here, and I've again, like, I just want to give that disclaimer. You know, I have been studying this for 20 years, so I'm not just coming in here out of nowhere. But
Right. Oh,
I know
sure.
there are a lot of people. I mean, I would say 500 to 1,000 people who know more about this than me. Maybe 2,000, 3,000, thousands. Let's say thousands.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, and that's just today. I mean, tens of thousands, 50, 100,000 have died that know more than me
Sure,
about
right.
this. But anyway, so and that's one premise of the show too, is just like to stay open-minded, and if I'm wrong, tell me, and if it matters, I'll publish it and I'll correct it. And I've done that a few times. But yeah, so back to how did I get involved in Chokeholds? I went to Dallas because I was like, I'm gonna do this podcast, and if I'm serious about it, I need to go to this conference. Like, I should, you know, see what I can learn, try to meet some people. And there were a lot of people that I wanted to meet, but my hope was like, is there a chance I can meet James Eugenio? Like that, well, he's gonna be there. Oh, dude, that'd be so cool. Because I'd read a bunch of his, you know, I'd read all the books he put out.
Yep.
And so I'm there the first night, and I'm sitting in the hotel lobby, and everybody had problems with rental cars because there was this big lacrosse tournament in town, youth lacrosse tournament. So all the rental cars were gone. So everybody's pissed off because they're just getting the hotels. So I'm sitting there, and I'm just mutually complaining to a guy sitting next to me about the rental car situation. Turns out he's Mark Adamczyk, who's there with, and he's friends with Jim and Paul. And there's Jim sitting right across from me, and Paul Blow's there, and they're talking about this recent thing they had with Oliver at the Times. And yeah, we just kind of started chatting, and I'm just trying to be cool. I'm just literally like pretending like I didn't know who he was. Jim's probably gonna listen to this. He's never heard my perspective of this. But anyway, so yeah, we ended up getting a drink and hanging out, and then the next day we went to Dealey Plaza and grabbed lunch, and just kind of started chatting about, like, you know, what are the chokeholds. And Paul Blow brought it up. So
Okay.
what are the things that are like the greatest hits? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And then we kind of debated what they are and what they're, and then there's some that's like, hey, actually that one's not a chokehold, and I forget what, you know, what those are, but there were some that are not, you know, slam dunks, you know. So that we kind of decided we were going to do a project on it, and then we kind of voted and made bullet point lists, did a few Zoom calls, and then kind of, yeah, just divvied the chapters up, and went from there. And I had already done a chapter on, like, I had done a deep dive, written about, you know, 40 pages for the podcast. So I was kind of able to repurpose a lot of that research. And then for the impersonations chapter, I had documented a lot of these impersonations, and I had some people send me some other ones, and that's kind of how I dove into that. But yeah, I created a big research outline at the, like, once I decided, you know, because I did like what most people do. I read a bunch of books, and I thought I knew what was up for sure. Then I went to Facebook, and then I was like, hey, it's definitely a conspiracy. What are we gonna do to, like, get a new government investigation? And then I just got worked by all these people that are like, what are you talking about? I was Oswald alone, like laughing emoji, like clown emoji. I'm like, oh my God, you
Yeah.
guys are so mean. And they had citations for everything. And I'm like, oh man, they got facts. They're coming with evidence. And
Right.
so what I realized, and this is why I was like, well, I have to do this podcast. I realized that they reach different inferences. And they, you know what I mean? Like I think that it's a bridge too far for them to think that any evidence can ever be fabricated. But you have to believe evidence is fabricated to believe there's a conspiracy, and I think there is evidence to
Yeah.
support that it's fabricated, for
Sure.
example. But there are some things that are, I just think, a bridge too far for some people, and I think that's one of the big differentiators. Um, and it is crazy to believe. There's a lot of crazy stuff, but take your time and study it, and you'll be surprised where the road takes you.
Matt, let's backtrack a little bit. Before you, when you were talking about, you mentioned Harvey and Lee. So that's a theory, really, that's based on a researcher, John Armstrong, and he came
Yeah.
up with that there's basically two different people as Oswald. Um, do you subscribe to that theory? Because I'll tell you my personal opinion. I don't know if I totally subscribe to his theory, but to me, he's a fascinating researcher because his work is really, really good, and I'd love to have him on the show eventually.
Mm.
Because he proves, like, Oswald is supposed to be in New York, but he's also supposed to be in Louisiana. Like
Hmm.
he puts everything out on the table, and his research is very good. But what do you think of his theory?
Well, let me just say this. The night I met James DiEugenio, for the first time, the first thing I asked him is, not the first thing, but once I realized I could speak freely to him was, is John Armstrong credible?
Wow.
The first thing I asked.
And what
And
did he say?
he goes, well, he's been going to the National Archives for like a month every year. He just takes off and he's got money, so he's not worried about that. And he just goes to the National Archives and does nothing but go through documents and
Right.
then archive them, study them. And so I think the point is he's definitely credible. I put him up there with like Sylvia Maher
Okay.
among JFK researchers. Like I think he's the man. So like
Yeah. He's
I've
tremendous researcher.
yeah, I have not spoken to him. I've spoken to a guy who works with him. So I have like a go-between that I've talked to. And it's been very helpful to me. And he's aware of the show and he's aware of the episodes I've done because I mean I'm deep into his book right now, kind of going through it with the podcast.
Right.
But to answer your question, do I subscribe to it? So there's two parts of it. There's the research that he uncovered, and then there's his theory. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And these documents are the documents,
Yeah.
so that he's only got to be right a couple of times for there to be problems.
Yes.
The question is, what does it mean? What does it mean if he definitively establishes that either a document's falsified or we have examples, this pattern of Oswald being in two places at the same time? That's back to that conversation. Does it mean there's two Oswalds? That's his theory. Does it
Right.
mean that some of the documents are faked for some nefarious reason? Possibly. Does it mean that there's another person and it's not the same constant person? So yeah, so I mean, his theory is, and I just want to say I'm not saying he's wrong. So to answer your question, I
No, I'm
have
not
not,
either.
I
Yeah.
have not debunked it, and I think the reason that you can't, and let me just say this too, because this podcast is like deep in the game. This is people that like really that are really studying the case. You can't come out of the gate and go full Harvey and Lee. You can't go
No,
full
no.
two Oswalds. So what I'm trying to do is just cover the documents only.
Okay.
And then when I get to the end, I mean, and cover the discrepancies too. Like I'm pointing to discrepancies, just like Armstrong is, but I'm not overlaying this Harvey and Lee theory on my podcast right now. Okay.
Right. Right.
At the end of season 2, probably the last episode, I'm gonna lay out all of the facts in support of his Harvey and Lee theory, and I'll lay out the facts on the other side too.
Okay.
But I think what he has going for him is there's all these witnesses that talk about different heights of Oswald and the different profiles. I mean,
Yeah.
there's one of them that speaks fluent Russian and doesn't drink alcohol, doesn't really talk to girls that much, maybe, but I don't know. From what I'm studying in Russia, that I don't know if that's the case. But because he seemed like kind of a player when he was in Russia, I gotta tell you. Oswald. I don't know. Harvey is who Armstrong would say it is. But yeah, I mean, it's what I've covered so far on it. I I had an episode with Michael Lombardi, former general manager of the Cleveland Browns. Pretty exciting. He's an NFL guy, super deep into the JFK case, and we looked at 8 of these claims about two Oswalds at the same time as Oswald was growing up, and 4 of them we found to be inconclusive, like they could go either way.
Okay.
And 2 of them one of them we basically debunked, which I hate that word, but I think one of them I part ways with Armstrong on. And that's the Beauregard. Him be It's actually the one you brought up, the report card showing that he's in 2 places at the same time.
Right.
So the report card does show that, it looks like it. And then because I always look for the counterpoint, and the counterpoint, these guys were arguing that, well, the 89 days is how many days there were in that semester, and just because they wrote it down doesn't mean that he attended. It's like, well, why would they write it down if he didn't attend? Like, so I rejected their argument, and I thought Armstrong was right, but then I noticed this little notation that somebody else pointed to, like as an afterthought, and it said date of admittance was like January 10th, which fits the sort of the official story. It's like
Okay.
the document itself undermines the argument that was trying to be made on that one. So on that one, I didn't think that it was supported. And then there's the North Dakota thing. The whole question is Aline Mosby's. So there's a Oswald sighting in North Dakota. Okay, and the whole thing comes down, and uh, when Aline Mosby interviews Oswald in Russia, she puts in the story that it actually goes out, that's published in UPI, that Oswald had spent time in Texas, New York, and North Dakota, as I think, as well as New Orleans growing up. But and there's a guy named Stanley Timmer who was in North Dakota who says he saw Oswald at this period of time when Oswald would have had to be in New York based on the records. But when you look at the actual transcript of what Aline Mosby wrote or said, I think she had to be referring to New Orleans, and she must have accidentally wrote North Dakota down, because after he says North Dakota, he talks about exploring dusty libraries all throughout New Orleans, but he just said
Okay.
North Dakota. So
Right.
it doesn't
Right.
seem to fit. Now, Armstrong says that her handwritten notes did say clearly North Dakota, and that it got translated to New Orleans, but I've never seen the handwritten notes. So if I saw those handwritten notes, that would change my mind. All
Right.
right. So those that's where I kind of part ways with Armstrong there. But here's where I think he's absolutely right.
Okay.
Stripling, I think
Yes.
you got 5 people. You have, I want to say, 4 witnesses plus the principal, and then you got all the stuff Robert Oswald was saying.
Mhm.
And he didn't name the exact date, but he said over and over again that Lee went to Stripling. So that's really weird. And they all say that he lived at the same house. And then incidentally, Marguerite moved back into that house later on, which is pretty weird, which is not disputed. So yeah, it looks like there's 2 Oswalds at the same time there. You certainly can't rule it out. I lean towards it. And then the other one, the big crazy one, is Palmer McBride, which the Warren Report relies on Palmer McBride to talk about how Oswald was a communist, and he got in fights with people because he's talking about Marxism. They love that part of it. What they
Right.
didn't love about what Palmer McBride said is when he knew Oswald.
Yeah.
And the time period of when he knew him overlaps with when we know Oswald is in Atsugi.
Mm-hmm.
So then you go, okay, well then this guy must be wrong. But then when you zoom into the details, he talks about going to an opera with Oswald. Well, that opera only happened once, and it's in the fall of 1958, not 1957, when it would have been plausible, or I want to say 1956. But it's like off by a year or two. And then the whole thing hinges on all these people testify that had recently been Russian space developments, and everyone was talking about the Russian space developments. It had to be the fall of 1958 because, or I don't, I don't have the years in front of me, but the point is, it had to be the year when we know Oswald was in Atsugi, because that is when Sputnik and Laika the dog happened, and then
Right.
also they cite a specific, when Oswald gets kicked out of the kid's house because he's talking about communism too much. That same kid talks about a specific party where he met Oswald that's tied to the date of like the first satellite launch, American satellite launch. That's so it's got a date certain. So that's to me game over for that. I don't the and so what are the counter arguments? Well, the counter arguments are everybody, Palmer McBride is mistaken, and all these people that said they saw it didn't see it. They must be wrong. That doesn't I don't think so.
No,
There's an
I
FBI
agree.
report, and then yeah, so I think Armstrong nailed that, and I think he might be right. The issue is, I will say, if it is a Harvey and Lee, like there's two of them together, I think it's more likely that it happened later in life, like in 16, 17, 18
Right.
range, as opposed to when they were much younger.
Yes, yeah. But his research is so detailed, and just he's a
Yeah,
phenomenal researcher. I
yeah,
mean,
and he might
total
be
respect to him.
he's yes, he's the man, and people like ridicule him and hate on him, and they're just stupid because
Sure.
he's done a great service to people. His library is available at Baylor. Baylor hosts his research library online. I use it all the time. So it's great, and I don't know where he stands with me, because I haven't checked in since I did the episode disagreeing with a couple of his takes. But again, like, really, it's kind of like I almost agree with 7 out of 8, because four are
Right. Sure.
inconclusive, and one of them's like, I don't know, you may or may not be right, but one of the main points seems to be undermined in terms of the North Dakota transcript. I just try to follow it exactly where I think it goes. I mean, everybody thinks they're calling balls and strikes, I suppose, but like, you know, uh, sometimes I agree with John Armstrong, sometimes I don't, but I agree with him enough that I would definitely be labeled someone who subscribes to his theory, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, I think if you got 500 JFK researchers in a room, I don't think you're going to have any of them that agree on everything
No,
Right.
this
with
case
each
is too
other.
complicated. I mean,
It's
there's
so
going to be,
complicated. Yeah.
yeah, but
But yeah, but good for him, and it's great. There's no other researchers, nobody else that's that like polarizing, because there's a lot of people that believe there's a conspiracy that have very strong feelings against him for whatever
yeah,
reason. But
I agree, and I think that's his work is tremendous. So
yeah,
total respect to him. But let's get back into some of these other ones, Matt. I just want to do a few more. Let's talk about the one you mentioned earlier, Ralph Yates, because that's
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. Ralph Yates, man, yeah. So this is the now here's what's fun. Put together Dobbs House and Ralph Yates, then you're having a good time.
Right.
So let's do that real quick.
Okay.
So Dobbs House is the sighting where Oswald supposedly sees Tippet, and it's the Wednesday before the assassination. That
Uh-huh.
he sees Tippet in the Dobbs House restaurant, and shoots him a dirt. Tippet shoots him a dirty look, or he shoots Tippet a dirty look, whatever. And the waitress remembered him because he was rude to the waitress, kind of thing. So it's like a non-issue. I mean, yeah, they're in the same room at the same time, but that certainly doesn't show that Oswald knew Tippet. So I always looked at that as like it's an FBI report, who cares? But hold on now. That can't be Oswald, because Oswald is at the school book depository.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait a minute now. That's not I was thinking that was like actual Oswald that had run into him, and it was close to his rooming house, where the Dobbs house was just a few blocks from Beckley, his rooming house. So that's why I always thought that. It just dawned on me, wait a minute, he was working then. And then I realized, hold on now. Hold on. Ralph Yates picked up a hitchhiker at, well, I want to say 10:30 a.m. from on the highway near Oswald's rooming house. What time is Oswald seen at Dobbs' house? It's like 10 a.m.
Yeah.
So it's the same day. It's probably the same person, the same interaction. It seems to me. Right there in the same place. That would kind of those puzzle pieces absolutely fit. But anyway, Ralph Yates says that he picked up a hitchhiker near Oswald's rooming house, and the hitchhiker has a long package, about 4 feet long, that he says has curtain rods in it. It's a paper bag, and he gives him a ride to work. So as they're to this man's work, the hitchhiker's work, as they're driving, uh, he starts asking Yates, "Hey, do you think anyone could kill the president if they shot him from like a tall building?" And then he mentions something about Jack Ruby to this
Right.
guy. Okay, I forget what that part was exactly. And then Yates drops this man off and his curtain rods at his place of work, which is the Texas School Book Depository building. This is on the Wednesday before. Now we know it can't be Oswald because Oswald's already there.
Right.
He's already at work. I mistakenly said on my podcast that we have the time cards. We don't have time cards. They didn't keep time cards. I was wrong. See, there's an example of me saying I was wrong. but but anyway, so yeah. Then after Yates gets back, it's like an air conditioner repairman. It was some sort of job like that. He gets back from doing that. He had been out on a service call, so there is proof that he was on a service call. So he would have been in that area at the time he says he was there. He tells his coworker Dempsey Jones about the interaction, picking up this hitchhiker. Now, of course, he doesn't tell Dempsey Jones that the hitchhiker looked like Oswald, but he does say some of the things that the hitchhiker was saying to him. Um, and Dempsey Jones confirmed that with the FBI. But Dempsey Jones also said that he sometimes talked about a lot of foolishness. And there were there's some other witness in the record that says that Yates, um, he would kind of exaggerate things, and they kind of had some witnesses to kind of throw doubt on him. But so here's where it gets fun. So the FBI, so he raises his story. He sees Oswald on TV and he goes, "This is the guy I gave a ride to after the assassination." After the assassination, that's when he sees Oswald on TV. He comes forward to the authorities, says, tells his story of what happened. The FBI gives him a polygraph to see if he's telling the truth, and he passes the polygraph. They keep giving him polygraphs. I don't remember whether there's 3 or 4 that they gave him, but after they'd given him 3 in a row, I think it is, they there was a memo, and he passed all of them. There's a memo from J. Edgar Hoover saying that they need to give him an urgent teletype, that he needs to give him another polygraph. And he passes that one, and they say, "Look, we think you believe what you're saying because you keep passing these polygraphs, but we're gonna have to. That means that you're crazy, so we're gonna have to put you in an insane asylum." And
Unbelievable.
he was only, and I've got to push back on this. They go, "You say he was in there for his whole life, but the documents say it was like 18 days." It's like, yeah, it was, and then he had to come back, and then he was in and out, like he was there pretty much his whole life, and he escaped. He ends up dying when he's late 30s, early 40s, but he received dozens of shock treatments, and he never changed his story.
Unbelievable.
So to me, there's the father of, I want to say, like 5 kids at the time. So he gained nothing. He lost everything from it. And people who think that and so if you're a lone nutter, and I don't want to use that as a pejorative. So what if you're someone who thinks Oswald did it alone? Okay,
Hmm.
you have to believe that this man is just making this up. But I can't. I don't understand how people can do that when they look at the case. So you just have to hang your hat on, well, Dempsey Jones does say that he speaks a lot of foolishness, and there's this, family member that says that he exaggerates. So that's just what he's doing, speaking foolishness and exaggerating. Don't mind the shock treatments and the polygraph.
And we will be right back. DK's Corner, located on 802 East Lackawanna Avenue in Oliphant, Pennsylvania. Visit DK's Corner for hot and cold sandwiches, soups, salads, pizza, and delicious breakfast, including breakfast sandwiches, specialty coffees, and DK's Razzle Dazzle flavor shaken espressos. And take it from me, the best cheesesteaks around. Follow DK's Corner on Facebook and Instagram, or call them at 570-209-0278 to find out about their daily specials and catering. Check out DK's Corner, Oliphant's little hoagie shop. And we thank DK's Corner for sponsoring That's Enough Out of You. That's DK's Corner in Oliphant, Pennsylvania. Are you thinking about selling your house? Well, Bob Connors, a realtor at Christian Saunders Real Estate, says, I can't sell your house, but I sure as heck can market it and get it from sell to sold. Call Bob today for great marketing and to get a ton of eyeballs on your house. Are you in the market to buy a home? Not sure where to start? If it looks like something you shouldn't buy, Bob's gonna tell you that. Think you can't buy a house or have no idea where to start? Been there, done that. Bob will get you going in the right direction. You can reach Bob at 570-614-3624 or 570-335-9000. And you can find Bob on Facebook at Bob Connors-Realtor. Whether you call Bob or not, please remember, stay awesome, all you awesome humans, and be kind to each other. Bob Connors, the realest real estater. And thanks to Bob Connors and Christian Saunders Real Estate for sponsoring That's Enough Out of You.
There's just a couple more, Matt. Let's talk about Laura Cottrell at the Texas Employment Office.
Yeah, that's a little known one. And basically, let's see, I got to see how far back this one was.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, so she's trying to place people with jobs at the Texas employment office or unemployment office, whatever the name of it was. And she interviews Oswald, and she's working on placing Oswald, and it turns out that that she says that the people that are sitting in front of her are two different people. So it's like, at one meeting, it seemed to not be the same person that I had met with before. Let me get you the exact site on that, because here we go, Texas Employment Commission. Yeah, so this came up through the HSCA, Gaten Fonzie, who's great.
Tremendous.
Yeah, he did a lot of good work.
Great work. In his book, The Last Investigation, is phenomenal.
Yeah, you learn a lot about just sort of the HSCA investigation overall in that one. But yeah, she says the second time that she saw him, and this was October 3rd was the first time, and October 22nd of 1963. And she says the second time that she saw him, he looked the same general outline, color, build, but something was different in basically his bearing, the way that he acted. He was slouchy, unkempt, and unmilitary looking. And the one thing that she remembered about him from before was that he was very military, pulled together, neat as a pen. This other guy wasn't. So, is she just trying to get some clout as she, 15 years later when she's contacted by the HSCA? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how you explain that away, but people do.
And the last one for me is, I think, one of the most important witnesses in this case, and that's Silvio Odio.
Yeah.
And of course, they mentioned this in the movie, in Oliver's movie.
Yeah. Silvia Odio. So her parents are both in jail as basically political prisoners in Cuba. So these guys come by, and they're trying to get money for JURE, which I don't I forget what the exact juror
we mentioned it before.
yeah, there's a D'Eugenio would know it, but so would Jefferson Morley, but I don't have that one at readily available. But anyway, they thought that they could get money from their organization and kind of get plugged into the underground Cuban scene from Sylvia Odio because her mom and dad were, sort of in the game of uh, being anti-Castro Cubans. So anyway, these guys, there's Leopoldo, who's kind of like the main one who does all the talking, and then there is another Cuban guy, and then there's an American that she's introduced as Leon Oswald. And you go, so anyway, basically these guys are like soliciting money. And she's like, no, I don't know. She kind of like is standoffish, not really involved, but she gives Leopoldo her number, and he calls her later. And so if it was just the one interaction, I would go, how could she remember that? Maybe she would think it kind of looks like him. But then Leopoldo called her back, and I remember as I was researching this, she thought that the reason he was calling her was just because like he wanted to like get fresh with her, as she said.
Right.
But turns out she was part of history. He might have also, who knows. But anyway, he told her on the phone that the American was Leon Oswald and that he was a great shot. Like that sounds like
Yeah.
it's very, very specific. If you trace the Odio story, so anyway, so she came forward after the assassination and said, described this interaction, said that the American was Leon Oswald and that looked just like the Lee Oswald on TV. And her sister supported the same story. Her sister was there when they visited, but wasn't the main one that interacted. Um, and one reason this is really important is because it overlaps with a period of time when Oswald was thought to be in Mexico City.
Right.
So
Exactly.
so that's why this would have to be, and I don't know if I believe Oswald went to Mexico City or not. I
I don't
That's
think
why
he did.
like,
There's no evidence that he did. I mean,
yeah. Well,
in
there's
the
the evidence is the interviews with the people on the bus. But I got to dive into the flip side of that. I've read, so that's one reason I said I don't want to go super deep on Mexico City,
right,
because I know it from the context of like of the Hardaway Lopez report that
right,
I've done a lot of work on. But the trip from, the granular details of when Oswald would have left Mexico City, how did he get there? The only book I've read for that is a little book called Case Closed by Gerald Posner. So 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 I say that to
hmm,
say I have yet to find the counterpoints to the official narrative on with specifically with regard to uh the beginning of Oswald's trip to Mexico City and how the official story is that he got there and can't. There's a few people that they have in that the Warren Commission interviewed, I believe. They may just be FBI reports. It's been a minute since I've looked at it. But there are people who say they were on the bus with him as he went down to Mexico City. So that's the question. Like, is he being impersonated? Is it
right.
where
But
is the
Matt,
shell game?
you also have for me, you have the CIA had that place, the consulate under heavy surveillance, and the pictures that they have clearly they're not Oswald.
Yeah,
They have
correct.
that one that the guy's like a big Russian bear, and then the other
Right.
one's like a blonde Oswald.
The other one
Um,
looks like Sean Penn.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and then the other thing is that, J. Edgar Hoover would later say that, his FBI agents heard the tapes of the Oswald in the Mexico City, and voice recognition doesn't match the Oswald
Right.
that's in the Dallas jail.
Yeah, I agree. So I think all those are not Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
I just don't know where he is, because I also don't know if he was hanging out, because okay, yeah, I mean, it's just a mystery. You know what
Yeah,
I
it's
mean?
like he's impersonated twice, but where's the real Oswald at that
Yeah,
time?
it's like a shell game. It's like, so
Right.
where are you at, man? What's actually going on? That's all. So I don't want to sound silly only saying one side, only giving you what the Warren Report said on that tiny part of it. That's all. But
Right.
yeah, Sylvia, and then the HSCA looked at it, and they said it was like Lauren Hall, and William Seymour and a couple other
Yeah.
guys, but that kind of ended up not looking like the HSCA kind of ruled that out as not. They didn't think it was credible, and the HSCA where they landed was they thought that she very well could have seen Lee Harvey Oswald. There's a strong probability that one of the men was or appeared to be Lee Harvey Oswald. So,
And
yeah,
Matt, interestingly enough, in Oliver's movie JFK, David Ferry, Joe Pesci's character David Ferry, also refers to him as Leon Oswald. He said they knew him as Leon, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I was just I'm in a 90s rap cover band, believe it or not. We called the Winnie Cooper Project. We
Wow.
play regionally. And last weekend I was in Cleveland playing the Cleveland Winter Beer Festival, and we stayed at this Airbnb across the street from St. Ignatius High School, which in addition to kicking my high school's butt in football, growing up, that is the alma mater of Mr. David Ferry.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I just walk and it's this super old, like it's like a campus, and it's like this like Catholic private school has been around since the turn of the century in Cleveland. And
Yeah.
I'm just like closing my eyes thinking like David Ferry went here. Holy crap.
We could do a whole series of episodes on David Ferry.
Yeah.
Oh, for
Fascinating
sure.
character.
Yeah. So Matt, getting back to Tippett, if we could, because this is always the thing when I talk to people who are skeptics, skeptical of any sort of a conspiracy theory, or someone else did it, they always come back to, well, then why did Oswald kill the police officer? Why did he kill the JD Tippett? I know you've done a deep dive into that on your podcast. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that, how you respond, when people say that.
Sure. Yeah. That's, I mean, I think it's you're right, and somebody Bugliosi, he's the one that said the Tippett murder is the Rosetta Stone of the JFK
Right.
assassination.
Yeah.
So there's something to that. I mean, you got to look at it, and it's I was I don't want to get too sideways here on this, but there's the one of the things I was a little disappointed with on the Reiner podcast is there was one sentence on Tippett, but I get it. I do get it. I understand what they're trying to do. They had to get in and out in 10 episodes. And so I don't
Right.
want but it would have been nice to get the
Sure.
excellent production value and talk about Tippett a little.
And Matt, let me just cut you real quick. I just want to say, John Armstrong did some tremendous work on Tippett too.
Ooh,
He
yeah.
talks about, Captain Westbrook.
Uh-huh.
He's a fascinating character
Man,
in this whole thing. So
I've watched the John Armstrong Black Ops Radio
yes,
talking about the Tippett murder probably 50 times. Like I would like honestly
fascinating.
like I would just like fall asleep to it for a period of time. That's like I was like so deep in.
Like I think he nails Westbrook, to be honest with
I
you.
think yeah, I think I mean
And
yeah, I
Westbrook
kind
would
of think
end up
so.
in Vietnam over there training
Yep.
their
Yeah.
secret police over there, which is interesting, working with Ed
He's
Lansdale.
sure in a lot of places at the
Yeah.
he uncovers the jacket
Yeah.
and he's one of the first people that shows up at the Texas Theater. And he doesn't, by the way, he doesn't he doesn't go to the scene of the Tippett crime. Where does he go? He goes straight to the jacket. Captain Westbrook goes straight to the jacket, which is in a parking lot that's, I don't know, maybe 3/10 of a mile away. But he wouldn't, there's no way he was under a car. Come on, man. How do you know to go there and go grab it? It's wild. Anyway, so, and he forgot that he got it in his Warren Commission testimony. But at any rate, just to kind of zoom out, yeah, I mean, if Oswald killed Tippett, then it makes a lot of sense that he would have, that he potentially could have killed Kennedy. Like
Right.
if I believed that, then that would get me to him kill. That would get you a lot closer because you go, oh well, obviously he's got something to hide. What's he doing? But the answer is you just got to zoom into the details.
Yeah.
So the it's like the whole thing, man. Occam's razor. Everybody goes, you're conspiracy theorists just don't believe Occam's razor because they're stupid because they want to believe crazy things because they have to they have to believe that, the world is a more complex place because the simpleton, like Oswald that could kill their hero, that's just too random of a world to live in. Like, this is gaslighting. Shut up. Like, you want to talk about the issues? Let's talk about the issues. Don't gaslight me, dude.
Exactly.
So you're being an asshole. Like, stop.
Exactly.
So just like anyway, okay. So the main thing is the time. That's the first thing I look at. Okay.
Yep.
So if we're going to look at time at all, if we're going to consider time, then Oswald could not have done it. Okay.
Absolutely.
So because we're talking about, there's a whole conversation. Well, when did he? This gets into like real granularity here, but when did he leave exactly? Well, if you take the Warren Report time, it's like about 103, 104 ish, right? And then it's like, well, when is, how long did it take to get there? And there's a lot of debate on that, whatever. But the answer is, somewhere between, let's say, it's 8/10 of a mile. So you know how long that takes. What, 10 to 15 minutes, 18 minutes is what one of the Warren Commission counsel said it took him. But it's somewhere in that range, right? Which is kind of a big range, I know. But I think it's closer to, let's say, 12 minutes. Some people think it's like 18, whatever, but whatever. It's not nothing, okay? And nobody sees him going there. No, nobody sees Oswald on the way walking from his rooming house to the Tippet crime scene. The Tippet crime scene is not on the way to the theater. If he was walking to the theater, it's out of the way. It doesn't make sense for him to stop there. But the biggest thing is the time that Tippet's killed. You've got all these witnesses. There's, I forget the woman's name, but somebody who's looking at the clock on top of her TV and it says 106 at the moment he's shot, and she sees that. And then you've got, the ladies waiting. Helen Markham's waiting on a bus, and the bus, I want to say, arrived at like 112, and she was walking to it, and it was a block away. So yeah, 106, 107, 108. That makes sense. This guy, I forget his name, but he shows up and he's got a watch, and he looks at his watch and it's 1:10, and Tippet had been dead on the ground for a while, lying in a pool of blood. Or he was, I don't know, for a while, but he's been dead. He's dead at 1:10. So if he's dead at 1:10 and Oswald leaves at 104, no way he got there in 6 minutes. It's not possible.
Right.
So and the counterpoint, how people get out of this one is they go, well, it's 1963. Everyone didn't have their watches at the, calibrated, and the time is not reliable. So I go, okay, so we're gonna throw out time. Got it. So if we're gonna throw out time, then let's talk about what are you gonna look at next. You've got you do have witnesses. I mean, the witness statements is what nails Oswald. That's what looks really bad for Oswald. Like when you say that 7 witnesses identified him, that's pretty bad. But when you zoom into what they saw, it's not like they saw him up close. They saw somebody who looked like Oswald, they said. And then when you look at the actual way that the lineups are done, he's got a black eye, and they say his name's Lee Harvey Oswald, and he works at the Texas School Book Depository. They, during the lineup, so that's kind of not fair. So he stuck out like a sore thumb, which is one of the cab drivers. I want to say if it was Whaley or the other one, but I talk about it in these episodes. The cab drivers kind of lay out what the scenario was like at the lineup. So it wasn't really a fair lineup. But then you also look at what the witnesses said that they saw. Well, what do they see? The ones the Warren Report relies on. He puts his hand inside the car. So, the perpetrator, you want to call him Oswald, that's fine. Whoever it is walking down the street. The police car comes up behind him. And this is a guy that just killed the president. He sees a cop. He's probably going to be running, right? He's going to
You would
just be
think.
booking it.
Right.
No, the police car stops, and then the dude stops and turns back. And he walks up to the passenger window and puts his arms inside the car, which, by the way, there was Oswald's fingerprints were never found on. So that doesn't seem like the behavior of somebody who was running. And then also you have all the crazy stuff JD Tippet's doing. at the time. I mean, JD Tippett's just manically going he's sitting there at Zang at the I forget what the name of the gas station was, Sunoco station maybe, but he's sitting at a gas station, and there are 5 witnesses who saw him there, and he's basically sitting across the street from the bus stop where Oswald would have gotten off had he not departed that bus early, and you know, gotten into a cab. So was he waiting to kill Oswald? I mean, is that what's going on? I don't know. But there's something going on with Tippett. Why is he
Right.
sitting at this? Is he just sitting there for no reason? And then
Yeah.
then he goes, there's a whole thing in the top 10 records, and he storms in and places an urgent call, and hangs up, and nobody answered. And then he leaves, and he goes and he pulls this guy over, and looks in the back of his car. And he's just kind of just manic. So what's Tippett doing? Something's going on with Tippett. That's weird. So I don't know exactly what happened, but I do think, and then you have the thing with the bullets. There's the conversation of like, was it automatic? Was it a revolver? And there's different types of shells.
Right.
But you know, do we believe that Oswald had a gun on him when he was arrested at the Texas Theater? I mean, I kind of think you got to believe that. I mean, you don't have to believe anything, but I tend to believe there was. But that means that given that the gun and evidence is the one that matches the order from Railway Express, the gun would have had to have been substituted by somebody for the one that matches all the paperwork that incriminates Oswald.
Hmm.
So now that's totally doable, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, that's what would have had to have been done. And then also, for Oswald to not have done it, someone would have had to have resembled him a little bit, for sure. And
Yeah.
that person would. So this is Harvey and Lee theory totally fits for JD Tippett killing. And
Yeah.
then also you've got, when I say fits, I mean it makes sense, like, and then also looking at the Texas Theater, and then
Yeah.
the report
What
of
time is he arriving at the theater? Because there's also an issue there of the time.
1:15 is when Butch Burroughs says that Oswald arrived between 1:08 and 1:15.
Right.
I mean, obviously, if he arrived at 1:15, or no, he arrived at 1:08 and he got popcorn at 1:15. I believe
Right.
that's what it was. But both of those times preclude him from possibly being at the Tippit crime scene.
Right.
And then you've got Butch Burroughs and Ernie from or no Bernie from Bernie's hobby house next door, that say that they saw Oswald get arrested out of the back of the theater, or an Oswald lookalike. Basically, he looked just like his brother. Okay.
Yeah, because
uh
officially there's a photo he got arrested going out the front.
yeah, we got arrested out the front. So who got arrested out the back? Probably the same guy that was seen by uh TF White, the auto mechanic, at the parking lot across the street from the shop there, which is very close to the Texas Theater, right after all this happened. He says he sees someone who looks just like Oswald, and that's a crazy story. You
Is
want a
that the
crazy?
one? Is that the Carl Mather story?
Yeah.
Why don't we go into that? Because that's
Woo!
fascinating. Because Carl Mather turns out to be a friend of JD Tippett.
This wild, man.
This is wild.
This
I
is
don't know,
one.
Billy. I don't think you heard this one, but
No,
this is
I've
wild.
not heard this.
Oh
No.
my
Oh,
God,
let's get
dude.
into this.
This is one of the spiciest ones. When I say spicy, I mean like it seems to point pretty obviously to something going on that's not Oswald alone. Okay.
Right.
But all right, so Carl Mather. So here's what happened. So and this all comes from what's interesting is there's this guy named what's his name? Wes he ended up being Wes Wise. Wes Wise is his name. And he was like a news reporter. He ended up being the mayor of Dallas. I want to say. I'm pretty sure that's the case. There's so much information in my head. If I don't have
Yeah,
a
he ended
citation.
up the mayor, right?
Yeah. All right. Good. But so he's at this like Kiwanis Club meeting or something, and it's a few weeks after the assassination, and it's nearby to where this auto mechanic is, And the owner of the shop, whose name is Mac Pate, I believe, says that one of his employees, TF White, after the assassination, he saw a guy that was sitting in the parking lot and was just kind of acting weird. And he went and went up to go see what was going on. And he wrote the license plate down in the car. And he made eye contact with a guy. And he kind of got out of there because he was worried that maybe he was the shooter or whatever. Maybe he was a bad guy. The guy leaves, and then TF White sees Lee Harvey Oswald on TV, and he goes, "That's the guy I saw in the parking lot in this car." But it turns out, couldn't have been, because Oswald had already been arrested at that time.
He's already been arrested,
just
right?
after, yeah. So they get Wes Wise so this guy's boss gives Wes Wise, it was just a few weeks after the assassination, gives him the license plate number to run. So, hey, you got some friends that are in law enforcement, see if they can't run this and see what they come up with. They ran it, and it went back to this guy named Carl Mather. So who's Carl Mather? Carl Mather worked for Collins Radio, personally installed the communications equipment on Vice President Johnson's plane of Air Force Two.
Right.
And he also was one of JD Tippet's closest friends. So close, in fact, that his wife found out that Tippet was murdered because Marie Tippet personally called her that day to tell her that Tippet had been murdered. That's how close they were.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Fast forward to the House Select Committee on Assassinations. They get a hold of this, which is called the Wise allegation, is what it's officially called. And they want to interview him. They subpoena him. He only agrees to testify. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but because it's been a minute since I looked at it. Either he got immunity or he pled the fifth, but basically he would not talk to them. So
unbelievable! It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And of course, Collins Radio is a fascinating, government contractor in this whole thing too.
Yeah. So, and look, if I get something wrong, then you gotta understand, the only things that I'm keeping score of is the podcast and books, because I have citations and footnotes for all those. If I'm going off the cuff, then if I'm approximately right, then come on, give me the benefit of the doubt.
You got that right. I mean, this
addressing the haters in advance.
Well, we'll hear about it.
Well, they'll be out there. There always is,
Yeah.
American Patriot will be texting us. But it's just fascinating, this Carl Mather story. I mean, because again, the Oswald that we know is arrested. He's in jail at this time.
Right. Now I will say, let me give you the counterpoints on that. Okay. The only counterpoint on Carl Mather is that the car that this guy saw didn't match the license plate. You follow what I'm saying? So
yeah.
The question is, of all the license plates in the world, what are the chances that they would have just happened to have that guy's license plate, and he would happen to just have written that down errantly?
Yeah.
Right? That's seems like better than the lottery.
Right. Yeah.
Worse than the lottery. So,
and we would like to thank our sponsor, Gracious Day Grains. Sean, you like to eat healthy, don't you?
Always, buddy. I try to eat healthy as much as I can.
Yeah, and there is nothing healthier than what they call like farm to table, right? So when you can get something right from the ground and make it and then put it right on your table. And Gracious Day Grains, they have a tremendous selection, and it's totally organic. Everything is, they don't use any sort of herbicides or pesticides or anything like that. They have a bunch of different products on their website, Gracious Day Grains. So if you go to graciousdaymilling.com, you'll find a bunch of great stuff there, Sean.
Yeah, you will, Billy. And it's owned by Tom Maxey, who's a great guy from Virginia. He's a truth seeker, just like me and you, buddy. And Tom's growing philosophy follows the wisdom of farmers of centuries past. And a quote from Tom is, "If we practice the right rotations, we exclude the bugs and weeds without needing herbicides or pesticides. So, I mean, this is great, Billy. I mean, what he's doing is fantastic.
There's cornbread mix, there's cornmeal, popcorn he sells, buckwheat Sean, have you had buckwheat pancakes?
No, buddy.
Oh my, they're delicious. I love buckwheat pancakes. And Gracious Day Grains sells buckwheat pancakes. Just go to their website and you'll be able to find all of this stuff there. You can order it right off the website. You can find out all about how they farm and their whole philosophy, Tom's philosophy. It's great stuff.
It really is, Billy. And one of the things he does is he grinds small batches at very low temperatures, which retains the flavor and the freshness.
Of course. And it can't get any fresher than that. I mean, it's literally right from the ground. So again, go to graciousdaymilling.com and just, take a look on there. You can order whatever you want and they'll send it right to your door. Again, it doesn't get any fresher than that, right from Tom's farm to your door to your table. So
absolutely. And eat healthy and you'll feel better.
Absolutely. I wish I could do that. I wish I could eat healthier, Sean.
We'll start with Tom's stuff, buddy.
I'm going to order some of those buckwheat pancakes. I love
there you go. I'm going to try them too, Billy.
Yeah, they're really good. All right. Gracious Day. We thank Gracious Day Grains for their sponsorship.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's another one that I looked at. I was like, man, that, and then probably the one that got me just fascinated with this is which I haven't covered. I'm not going to cover probably till season 3 on my podcast, but the Robert Venson story.
Oh, the seaplane.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned this before, but you want to talk about this where he ends up going from Dallas to Roswell, New Mexico.
Yeah, this fits in with the impersonation story, yes. I guess. But yeah, this is a wild story. It's just wild, and I don't know. The
Jim Douglas has this in his book.
He does, yes. And this is one of those when you get to these, the question is well, what's the Warren Report Defender position on this? And for ones that are this far out, they just basically point at it and they go, see how crazy it is? Can't you see how implausible this is? They don't really make the argument is the unlikelihood of it happening itself is the counter argument. And I think we have to admit that this is unlikely, but that's not a good point. So anyway, the story is Robert Venson is he lives in Colorado Springs. He's in the Air Force, I believe. And he's in some military branch, I think the Air Force. He has to go to DC to have a meeting for something. So he's in Washington, needs to get a ride back out west. And he's kind of at the air base getting ready to leave. I forget which one, but leaving from the DC area. This is on November 22nd. He's just trying to hitch a ride with anybody who's going west to kind of get him home. And he suddenly is called to go, join this plane that's getting ready to leave at the last minute. And it sounds like, if what he's saying is true, then this whoever put him on this plane made a big mistake. He was not supposed to be on this plane. But anyway, they get on this plane and it's just him and the 2 pilots, and it's a cargo plane, and they go, start flying west. And about halfway through the flight, they announce to him the president has been killed, and they make a hard left turn, and they go south, and they land in a dusty field along the Trinity River south of Dallas, according to Robert Venson. They then open up the gates, open up the plane, and 2 guys get on, and one of the guys that got on. So anyway, 2 guys get on. They walk right past him. He looks at them. They land. They then take off again. They land in Roswell, New Mexico. I know, aliens. Yeah. I know. I understand. I get it. But they land in Roswell, and the other guys get off the plane. No one speaks to him, and he tries to, he's trying to just figure out what's going on. The base had been shut down, had been locked down, and evacuated. There was no one at the base.
Right.
And he finally he's able to get home. And then if I don't remember, if it's the next day or a few days later, a week later, he gets a visit, and they ask if he wants to join the CIA, and he says no. And then months later, oh, I left out the main point. It was Oswald. So he sees when he gets home that, like, oh my God, the guy that I saw and the guy that killed the president, that's the same guy that was on the plane with me. How could he have killed the president? He looked just like him.
But
What?
again, yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, Oswald is in jail. The Oswald we know is in jail. He couldn't have been on a
Right,
seaplane.
correct. He couldn't have been on the plane. So then here's where it gets fun. So then he had already turned the CIA down once after that. Then he's sent to DC for a meeting, and he's told that he has to go work with the CIA. He then spends the next, whatever, 15, 20 years of his career working for the CIA in Nevada at Area 51. And then he came forward with this story after he retired.
Wow.
And yeah, and Jim Douglas did a lot of, he checked into this story, and a lot of his stuff checked out. I mean, he did a great job in his book JFK the Unspeakable.
So yeah, so that's, I
explaining
mean,
this.
in this again, like the puzzle pieces fit like that, and that also fits with Harvey and Lee.
Right.
So I'm just trying to make the puzzle pieces fit, and maybe it doesn't fit exactly, but that's my thing. I'm trying to do puzzle pieces, and I'm trying to do counterpoints. Like, okay, well, what do the other people say? Like, what, you know, that's kind of where my head's at.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Well, a couple of things though to close this out, because we've kept you here a long time, Matt. But this has been fantastic. And there's a lot of stuff we didn't get to. I hope we could get you back, because there's a
Yeah,
lot of
man,
other stuff
love
we
to.
want to cover.
Yeah.
But one of the good books that I read on the JD Tippet murder is Joseph McBride's book, Into the Nightmare. I
Yes.
don't know if you're familiar with that, but that covers the Tippet murder pretty good.
Yeah, I think McBride did a really nice job on it.
Yeah,
He dove into that special, in particular. I'm gonna have him on at some point. But yeah, I thought he did a nice job.
yeah, he did. And just, the whole thing here is something's going on here. I mean, even if you believe, I mean, what do you believe? Like, all these people are crazy? Like, they're all making this up? Like, none of this, like, you have all these different impersonations. I mean, it's like absolutely bizarre how many we're talking
Right.
about tonight.
Right.
So they can't all be, all you have to do is just prove one of them.
I think so. I mean, I think
I mean, a
it's,
lone gunman's not going to be impersonated. I mean, it's just,
yeah,
something's going on here, and the whole thing stinks of an intel op.
it does. It stinks of a bad intel op though. Like I'm saying,
Well,
like,
bad in a way. I mean, a couple things, like I think they make these so confusing, so you sound like an idiot when you talk about it.
yeah.
So I don't know if it's bad on I think sometimes I think they do things bad on purpose just to make you look like an idiot when you're a witness to this.
Well, yeah, but it's just like, look at Ralph Yates. You know what I mean? Like this guy, because here's what I'm saying. Here's what I mean by that. If you have two Oswalds doing the same thing, so now you have two, you want to whatever, frame Oswald and make it look like he's saying crazy things about killing the president.
Right.
Okay, but didn't they realize that the same witness who's going to testify to that is also going to say that he had curtain rods, and that's going to conflict with the other story of Oswald, bringing curtain rods with Buell Wesley Frazier? Like, how do they not realize that these things were going to conflict? And the answer is, they didn't realize anyone was ever going to know or investigate it. I think that they would
Well,
be
I
very
think
surprised.
the other thing on that though, Matt, I think a lot of times with these intel ops, like they're so um separated. Like everybody's got a role to play. Different people, like
Sure.
there's so many different roles where one person, like say, let's just say William Harvey, he's in charge of the assassination program. So he's actually doing the specifics of the actual getting the assassins and whatnot. That has nothing to do with James Angleton, who's controlling Oswald's files. So there's always different parts of the plot that they're working on. So what I talked about before, when you have all these different contingencies, you might have one group that's framing Oswald to be a lone nut, and you have another group framing him to be tied to the Cubans, and you have another group framing him to be tied to the Russians.
Hmm.
I mean, you have all these different things going on, and then at the end, they gotta get rid of some of these, and it does. I see what you're saying. It looks like a bad intel op but to me, it looks like, you know, it's almost like it's genius, to be honest with you, because it's so hard to explain, and
Right.
people who don't understand this stuff and have no idea how these intel operators work and these black operations are run. They it looks like it's just, you know, madness and craziness, and you sound like a whack job when you're talking about it. And I think that's the
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something to that.
It's organized chaos, or
It's organized chaos.
yeah, yeah. It intentionally confusing, intentionally looks like it's, you know, poorly done, but it's just who knows? Maybe it's just the, you know, the whole thing gone wrong, or maybe it
I
maybe
mean,
it's
some of this stuff is so bizarre. Like Matt, we had Professor Paul Blow on, and he talked about the one incident. Oswald was seen somewhere, and he was doing something, and he was seen with a bunch of Cubans, and one of them they had dressed up as Castro, like a Castro lookalike. Do you know which one I'm referring to?
No, Castro
Yeah,
lookalike.
yeah. Paul talked about that. Do you remember that, Bill?
I
They
do. I
had
don't
him
remember
dressed
the
up like
exact
he was.
details.
Yeah, he was dressed
Yeah.
up like Castro, and
Yeah.
it's just like
Is this
some of these are
in
just.
Cuba?
No, it wasn't in
No.
Cuba. No, no,
Huh.
it was in Miami, I think. Wasn't it,
Right.
Billy?
That's right.
It was in
Yes.
Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not hip to that. I'm sure I'll have to I'll have to
Yeah,
find
but
out
just like
what's
some
going
of these
on.
are just so bizarre, and you know the Roswell thing. I mean, it's just
Crazy.
Yeah, the one and a lot they're bizarre, but they're not just being made, you know. See the Vincent one, the Roswell story, that's coming just from him. So there's not a document on it. But then you can go back and verify that he did in fact, you know, have these jobs. He did in
right.
fact,
He worked for the CIA,
work for the
and
CIA. So yeah, that's kind of where what I try to look at is if I can point to it, you know, if it's something that I could put in a motion for summary judgment as from a legal standpoint, like then that's good enough for me.
and like with Silvio Odio, I mean, either you know he was impersonated twice in Mexico City and the Odio incident, or Odio's telling the truth, or not that she's telling the truth, but that was really Oswald. But then the Mexico City's got to be an imposter.
Yeah,
And then the Carl Mather story, I mean, that's hard to explain away. I mean, this is just, you know, it's just so many different impersonations. I mean, it's just craziness.
yeah. Carl Mather is kind of close to a smoking gun to me. I mean, I guess it's not a
Yeah.
smoking gun, but it's pretty bad. I mean, and then the other, you know, the whole thing on Oswald's 201 file, which I think we talk about a little bit in the JFK Chokeholds book, but
Right.
I know Eugenio and Oliver Stone talked about that a lot in their
Yes. And we
recent
talked about it on our
documentary.
podcast.
But that the way they handle the 201 file, you know, it's not covered by the Soviet Russia division, who should have his
They should
file,
have had it. Right.
but instead it's with Angleton. It's
Office of
like
Security. Right.
sitting at Angleton's desk, effectively, not literally, but I mean, so and then they go and they talk to, you know, John Newman and Jeff Morley went and talked to Jane Roman,
right.
who's on some of these documents, and she basically confirmed that there was a high intelligence interest in Oswald before the assassination.
Yes.
So I think the next step of official story, you know, establishment, government defenders, what the pivot is coming is, yes, he was CIA, but he was a rogue agent. Yes, he was. We shouldn't have covered that up. We shouldn't have covered that he was
Right.
CIA. But just because he was CIA doesn't. I think that's what they'll. I think that's. It feels like the next step
I could see
because
that. And you know, it's interesting to use that term rogue because you mentioned the Reiner documentary earlier. He used rogue a lot. And I'm thinking, you know, you got to watch when you use that word. When you think of rogue, you think of just a couple bad apples. But the CIA was a rogue outfit, you know, in the fact that they were doing all these assassinations and
sure,
removal of elected government officials all over the world, Iran, Guatemala, you know, attempts in Cuba, the Congo, and they were doing it without, in almost every case, presidential approval. So in a way, the CIA as an institution was a rogue operation.
plausible deniability, man. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, and there's where I'm at right now, and obviously I'm not there in the podcast, but in my own search for trying to figure out what's going on, uh, I, I want to learn a lot more about the military intelligence side of things.
Right.
Just because as I went to this JFK conference in Pittsburgh and talked to a lot of smart folks, sort of the prevailing wisdom was, yeah, CIA's involved and it's all the greatest hits. It's the characters, right?
Right. Angleton,
But
Harvey,
but
Dulles.
when you're talking about what's the impetus that got the thing rolling, um, you know, John Newman is pretty certain that it's military intelligence that's behind it, which is, I think, a new prevailing view within like the super deep research community.
Right.
And
Right.
I haven't seen the documents behind that. I want to dive into it more, but John Newman's what executive assistant to the director of NSA at one point. I mean, this guy's the man.
Yeah, yeah, and it's fascinating stuff. It's almost and military intelligence is one area that a lot of people have not done a deep dive into.
Right.
Specifically, they stick with the CIA, but it's almost like, I don't know if you guys remember that show 24, but it's almost
Yeah.
like you get to one bad guy and there's always another bad guy behind that one, and then
Oh,
you get
yeah.
to that and there's another bad guy, behind that. So I mean, I think there's a lot more to uncover than just the CIA. I do agree on that, definitely.
Love that
Absolutely.
you name drop 24. I used to watch every episode
Probably my
of that
favorite
back in the
all-time
day.
show, Matt.
That's so funny. Well, cool. Hey guys, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so much for having me on.
This was fantastic. Thank you for coming on, Matt. Well, we definitely want to
Thank
get
you,
back.
Matt.
There's so much we didn't get to. I definitely want to get into the documentary, on Paramount Plus and your involvement with that. So much to talk to you about. We really thank you for spending this much time, and again, hope you come back.
Yeah, I'd love to. We'll get something set up out here in the future in the next few months. Okay.
All right.
All right,
That's
thanks,
great.
Matt.
Appreciate you guys.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Cool.
That's Enough Out of You podcast is executive produced and written by Bill Rader and Sean Kane and edited by Bill Rader. The That's Enough Out of You podcast and logo are exclusive property of Bags of Chicken, LLC. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or accounts of this podcast without the express written consent of Bags of Chicken, LLC is prohibited. So don't even try it.